Hi, and welcome to Dwelling Place. We hope you are encouraged and inspired as you listen to this message. Enjoy.
So last week we started a new series. I think we're just calling it the series of UN, because I'm not sure that I could think of a better name. And so last week we looked at a very unique character. He was the disciple that wasn't chosen. He wasn't, and so we called it unselected and how to deal with disappointment. And so this week we're going to have another look at a more unknown character, but today we're going to look around this idea of being unoffended. You know, it was only a few weeks ago that I was sitting with some people and we were in conversation, and all of a sudden the conversation turns to talking about other people. And I tell you, there were some good stories, but through those stories, they were dripping with offense. And I'm sure you've been in those environments. You've maybe been in some of those conversations, and there's nothing like a good axe to grind, as they would say, particularly if you have a public platform where you can grind that axe. Because when we speak about our offense, when we speak about the axe to grind, it draws a crowd. It allows us to validate our victim status. It affirms our hurt. It elevates our self-righteousness. Yet how can we remain unoffended in a society where the social currency has value which correlates with offense? So there is a value within our communities, there's a value within our society to be able to take offense on and carry it with hurt and with pain, but we are not called to be people of offense. Offense is this: it's the condition of having your feelings hurt. It's that which prompts a person to bristle with indignation or disgust. I would invite you to go and sit in a Westfield for a couple of hours. Maybe just sit in your workplace for a couple of hours and just listen. It doesn't take too long before you start to hear the stories of pain and hurt, disgust, and things where people have taken offense. Genesis 4, chapter 1 through to 8, speaks the story of Cain and Abel. This is a story where Cain is offended that God accepted Abel's offering. Offense isn't a new thing. Offense is something which people have had to deal with since the beginning of time. And so the outcome of Cain's offense was murder. He killed his brother. In Genesis chapter 37 through to 50, we have Joseph and his brothers. And Joseph's brothers were offended at Joseph's dream. Joseph has this dream. They get offended, and what do they want to do? They want to kill their brother. 2 Samuel chapter 13 through to 19, we have Absalom, one of David's sons. He's taken offense toward Amnon, his half-brother, and offense towards his father, King David. The result was this: a divided kingdom, destruction to Israel, and the cost of his life. When we think of offense and we connect it to being hurt, we often don't think of the ultimate consequence of death, but ultimately that's where offense leads. These things were all due to being offended. As we move to the New Testament, this word offense appears a number of times, and in the Greek the word is this: scandalon, and it's the part of a trap which bait is attached to. So if you think of like a mouse trap, and where bait is attached on a mouse trap, that there is this word that is used in the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 16, we have Jesus telling his disciples, hey guys, I'm just letting you know, over this next period of time, there's going to be some bad things that happen to me. There's going to be some horrific things that I have to go through. And then Peter pops up and he says, you know what, I rebuke you, Jesus. I don't think that that's going to happen, nor should it happen. And then Jesus' response is this. He says, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, because you are opposing me. And then the next part of it, it says this, you are a dangerous trap to me. This word scandalon is used. It's like this bait of offense, this bait which is waiting for us to partake of it. And Jesus says to him, you see things merely as from a human point of view and not from God's point of view. When the bait is taken, the trap is released. And the devil provides us with an opportunity to be offended if we would simply take the bait. Bait is not big, but it's enough to get us interested. In Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 15, it says this, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, and it's our vineyards that are in bloom. So these things are healthy, they're going well. Make sure you catch the small foxes because they are the things that are going to ruin the vineyard. It's the little things, it's the bait. Little by little, hurt by hurt, accusation by accusation, we take offense. The church is not immune. In fact, I would argue the church is somewhat infected. Offense has become a pandemic in the life of the church. And it's an effective strategy of the enemy, understanding that the fruit of offense is immature believers. The growth of the church is the grief of hell. So the devil's strategy is to take us down one eye roll at a time. Because an offended house is ultimately an ineffective house. When we become comfortable with embracing one another's offenses, we are unable to encourage one another's gifts. And we become spectators throwing stones, not a family fulfilling a mission. G.K. Chesterton says this, the Bible tells us to love our neighbours and also love our enemies, probably because generally they are the same people. We, the church, are not immune from the opportunity to be offended, but we need to be experts at not taking the bait. Proverbs 18 verse 19 says this, an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. Augustine of Hippo says this, resentment, which is a byproduct of being offended. Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I wonder, this morning, I probably sense that this season of our church, we're talking about disappointment last week, we're talking about being unoffended this week. They're little things, but they're significant things. And I feel like that God's just sort of stirring something within us where he's beginning just to weed our hearts. He's beginning to have a look at some things and doing a bit of an examination, because if you continue to move forward while you're unhealthy, it doesn't make you healthier as you grow. It just gives a greater opportunity for the disease to spread. And so this morning, my encouragement to you, as it is my encouragement to myself, is let's continue to weed our heart. Let's continue to look where we're at. Let's continue to deal with the disappointment. Let's continue to be people that are unoffended. 1 Samuel chapter 25, there's this story, and it includes these three characters, David, Nabal, and Abigail. Now, Abigail isn't really spoken about too much. She's pretty well an unknown character. And what we have in this part of the Bible is we have David, who was a celebrity. He's taken down Goliath. He's a celebrity of Israel, but he's also a fugitive on the run. And he's in the wilderness. He's in this part, it's the desert. And he's there with, from what we know in this story, a minimum of 600 men. So it's not like a handful of us have gone and hung out in the desert to camp. It's a significant coalition of people. And so they're there, and a part of what they were doing while they were out there was they were protecting shepherds. They were protecting people that were looking after their flocks. Now, these shepherds were from Nabal's household. And so Nabal was based in this place which was fruitful and plentiful. And Nabal was wealthy. It was like he had everything going for him. He had money, he had property, He had possession. The Bible speaks of his wife Abigail, that she was sensitive and beautiful. She was distinguished. And so it's like Nabal's life was the ideal life. But it spoke about him poorly. In fact, Abigail says his name means you fool. And so what happens is David's been protecting these shepherds. It's come to a time of celebration and feasting. And David sends a few of his men down to Nabal's household and he says, hey, would you be able to give us some provision? We've been out looking after your men and looking after your property. It's the least that we think you could do. And Nabal's response, he just says, who the heck do you think you are? Who is this man? Like he didn't know. And so David's servants who had gone down to deliver the message come back to David and gone, you wouldn't believe what he said. He was like, David, who the heck are you? I'm not going to give you any of my stuff. And so David's like, okay, guys, strap on the swords. We're going to take this guy down. And so they prepare 400 of them. They get their weapons. They're beginning to make their way down to Nabal and his household. We aren't going to leave anyone alive. We're going to slaughter these guys. How dare they say that to us? It's pretty horrific. Abigail hears word from Nabal's servants of what he had said to David. And the Bible says that Abigail went quickly to David. She collected all of this produce and took to him and she spoke with him and she was the one that intervened and made a potential horrific act an act of peace. So we have this interesting story of people being offended, people presenting offense. And I just wanted to have a look at a couple key things out of it this morning. So, the building of offense. To take offense is to build a fence. Paling by paling, we allow offense to become a barrier. You know, when you stick a paling in the ground and then another one and you create a fence and you're putting distance between you and others. That's what this issue of offense and carrying hurt and pain does. In this story, we see this paling of entitlement. You see, David's men had been there protecting the shepherds of Nabal. There was no agreement made that we're aware of. And there's this expectation, there's this entitlement within David's heart that he can just go down and receive the property or the possession, the provision of Nabal. Nabal says, why should I give you what I've got? And all of a sudden we see this sense of entitlement being pushed back and forth between these two men. Steve Maraboli says this, when we replace a sense of service and gratitude with a sense of entitlement and expectation, we quickly see the demise of our relationship, society, and economy. David delivered an opportunity for offense, and Nabal took the bait. The paling of entitlement. The other one was this, the paling of pride. Nabal responds to David's request with these words, who is this person? David's come and given a request. I'm telling you, everybody throughout the land would have known who Israel was. Who David was. He had taken down the giant that was covering their land and their people with fear. Songs were written about this guy. He was a historical celebrity. But we have Nabal going, who is he? Who does he think he is? Who is he to expect my generosity and my gratitude? In 1 Samuel chapter 10, there's a similar scenario. We have Samuel, and Samuel had anointed and was appointing Saul as king. Now, Saul didn't want to be king. It says that he was hiding in the bags. But there was this moment where he's presented to the people and he's identified as the one who's going to be the inaugural king of Israel. And in verse 27, it says this, "But there were some scoundrels who complained, 'How can this man save us? Who does he think he is?' And they scorned him and refused to bring him gifts." There's this paling of pride. Who do you think you are? Pride is the opposite of humility. Humility elevates others over self, where pride elevates self over others. Who does he think he is? Pride is an arrogance of ability, of accomplishment, and of possession. It is a trust in self, focused on self, and worship of self. And Nabal delivered an opportunity for offense, and David took the bait. The paling of lack of respect or pride, the paling of no appreciation or entitlement. We can call the palings whatever we want to. A sharp response, being right, sending the text message at the wrong time, an unanswered prayer. It doesn't matter the name of our paling, but we do need to know that every time we stick one in the ground, we are building a fence. Before we know it, we have a full fence of a fence. We build fences to create barriers. And when we've built a fence in full, we've removed the sight of a face, we remove the sound of a voice, and we remove the strength of a relationship. We quickly find ourselves bound behind these palings of offense. So how do we respond to being offended? Abigail provides the ideal response to the opportunity of offense. In verse 18, it says this, Abigail wasted no time. The idea is this, we need to act quickly. Because the longer we allow something to seep into our heart, the deeper the roots go. Ephesians 4:26-27 say this, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. A foothold is this, do not give the devil a room or a place. The devil's objectives are this, to steal, kill, and destroy. So why would we give him a room and a place to be able to do that from? Act quickly. The second thought is this, we need to be generous and speak well. Abigail was generous with provision and spoke with wisdom. Proverbs 25:21-23 says, if your enemies are hungry, give them food to eat. If they are thirsty, give them water to drink. You'll heap burning coals of shame on their heads, and the Lord will reward you. As surely as the north wind brings rain, so a gossiping tongue causes anger. Our judgment justifies ill will and rhetorical accusation. It's like we are justified to speak how we want about these people. But this verse is not talking about the hot coals of anger and resentment spawning from offense. What it's speaking of is bringing health and healing to people. You see, this is the one verse in the Bible that we like to use and disconnect with a loving God. Because when we're hurt, there's nothing better than the idea of seeing those people hurt too. So when in Proverbs it speaks about our enemies, those that have hurt us and the opportunity of when we do good, we are hurting them by putting hot coals on their head, it sort of goes against the character of God. It gives us comfort. It's like, yeah, I'd love that. So if I speak well of them, if I give them something when they're in need, then really I'm hurting them. It's not what is being spoken about. You see, what would happen in those times of when people were destitute, when people weren't doing well, when they were unwell, to have hot coals placed upon somebody's head, it would bring warmth to the body. And warmth to the body would bring wholeness and restoration. So when we start to speak well of people that have hurt us, when we start to be generous towards people that have hurt us, we're not scolding their skull. We are bringing health and restoration to those relationships. Be generous and speak with wisdom. And the third one is this: she invited David to not hold offense. In verse 25, Abigail says this: please pay no attention to Nabal. Saul's response when he was appointed king, in that scripture that I spoke about before on the scoundrels that was spoken of that thought were like, who is this guy? He can't save us. This is Saul's response in chapter 10, verse 27 of 1 Samuel. It says, but Saul ignored them. It's interesting that one of Saul's first things that he has to really contend with is this idea of offense. But really the thing that brought him down later on was when David did well and he took offense to David. Maybe if he took this strategy and he just ignored it, he just let it go, maybe the outcome of Saul's life would have been different. Proverbs 19 verse 11 says this: a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook offense. When we put up palings, we create a fence, we build a barrier. We're not looking to build bridges. And when we remove the palings of a fence, we invite personal presence. We invite personal relationship. When we remove the paling of a sharp response, we invite a personal relationship. We invite personal presence. When we remove a paling of unmet expectation, we invite personal presence. Would you stand with me this morning? Imagine what it could look like if we pursued the higher calling of presence rather than being consumed by the bait of offense. The presence of God, the presence of people. You see, you might be sitting here or standing here this morning, and every time I've spoken about one of these things, it can be a little bit jarring, and you can see somebody's face, or you see somebody's name, or you're reminded of a situation and you know really you haven't dealt with it. And we can correlate that heaps to people, particularly people in authority, because we expect a better standard from them. We relate it to people who are close to us, and this is why I think the church is so challenged by it, is because there are relationships threaded all through this place. It's not just coming together once a term where we get to celebrate all the achievements of people and we just, well done, well done. It's like we are integrated into each other's lives at all different levels. And it's much easier to take on offense when you're close with people. The one we don't speak about a lot is when we have these palings, when we are building this fence with God. We spoke about last week, disappointment, unmet expectation. God, I've been praying and believing for this and you never did it. I'm hurt. Paling. God, this is how I saw my life. But it doesn't look the way I saw it. I'm not sure I can trust you. Paling. God, this was how I pictured something, and then all of a sudden my family or my friend, they got sick or they became unwell, and the life wasn't exactly the way that I'd believed for it. I've been praying for healing and I still haven't seen that come through, and we stick in this paling. And every time we stick another paling in, every time we continue to build this barrier between us and between God. His presence is foundational to who we are. John Wimber once said this: we don't seek God's power, we seek his presence. His power and everything else we need is always found in his presence. So we hunger after his presence above all else. Matthew 6:12, forgive us the wrongs that we have done, as we ourselves release forgiveness to those who have wronged us. This morning, I'm inviting you to this: to act quickly, to be generous and speak with wisdom, and to give it no attention. We need to remove the palings of offense.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you were encouraged as you listened to today's message. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to see you again on Sunday. See you later, church.